Hi there, and welcome to my first Corona diary in a while. I was doing them every day there for about 3 or so weeks, and then we did get very closely affected by someone who is very dear to us passing on in very sad circumstances, nothing to do with Corona. Anyway, today is Monday the 27th of April. I'm not quite sure what day it is from number wise from when I started these Corona diaries. It will be on the listing on YouTube. But I find myself doing many walks, and I'm sure many of us do, as part of what's happened through coronavirus and lockdown. We're finding ourselves hopefully exploring many areas that we've never explored before. I find myself in this large open space. You can see, of course, it's a cemetery behind me. In fact, it's a cemetery all the way around me, but it's also a beautiful large park which is situated, I'd say, no more than 15 minutes walk from my home, and yet I have never seen it before. This is one of the great advantages of suddenly having the time. I'm one of the lucky ones who's still working. I've spent 4 hours today on my computer looking into improving the sustainability of the build of any new houses that Excellent Housing Association may build. So I've been looking after the planet best I can for a few hours of paid work today, writing reports and going for this beautiful walk. Walking through this cemetery reminds, as cemeteries do, often remind us all of a subject which we all share in common, but not all of us like to deal with, and that subject is death. Of course, Corona is killing hundreds of thousands of people. It must be over 100,000 by now, I'm sure. Maybe it's over 200,000. It's killed over 20,000 in the UK as of yesterday. I think it's about 20,700 beautiful people. Maybe not all of them people would get on with. Different people who've lost their lives to Corona, 70,000. And yet we are in a country, tens of millions of people, and I myself live in a city of over 8 million people. So when you look at the numbers that way, every death is tragic to the soul who's lost his physical space, and to anyone who loved that soul. But death, my friends, is something we must always had to deal with as human beings, and not everybody's comfortable with that. It seems to me strange not to be comfortable with one of the very few things that all people have in common. You hear that plane flying overhead? It's the first plane I've heard today, and indeed I hear very few planes now. Isn't that a wonderful thing? An environmental impact of the corona pandemic, should I say. People have always coped with dying. People have had to deal before with pandemics. Just over 100 years ago, the First World War had ended. Men who were fathers and brothers, sons, lovers, were sent off and died in human warfare. We're very lucky to just be asked to stay at home. I think there needs to be some understanding of what are you allowed to do. Am I allowed to stand in this park still and talk to you when I'm over 2 meters away from everybody else? Should be allowed to do that. I know in some places that's been challenged by police. I've seen no police around, and picked up a beautiful big camper van 2 days ago, drove it back to where it had to be, did social distancing while viewing it, having masks and gloves and keeping away from the guy who owned it. Was all a bit unusual. We've now quarantined it and showered ourselves off for a few days. But there we go. That is the circumstances of Corona. Anyway, so that's a bit of an update on me and my feelings about it all. Stay safe. Do try and stay alive and make the most of the situation.